Hola amigos, bien o no, y saludos desde Inglaterra. Hoy el tema es toma su tiempo. Toma su tiempo antes para responder por cualquier pregunta. So este es el tema de hoy. So really the theme of the day is don't rush to answer. Just because someone's asked you a question doesn't mean you need to give your answer straight away. Give yourself some time to think. You can acknowledge that you've heard the question, because people don't like to feel ignored, but give yourself time to think about what you want to say. Now you can do this in a couple of ways. One phrase I particularly like is just to say something like "I see," which I agree does sound rather strange because you're hearing what they're saying, not actually looking at it, but it's a phrase we use which really means that you've heard them, but it doesn't mean you necessarily agree with them. If I say, oh, I agree, that's it, I agree with you. If I say I see, it just means that I've heard what you've said, but perhaps I don't quite either understand it or I don't agree. And then of course I can tell you that when I've had a bit of time to think. So you might offer me your opinion on something and I can say, oh, I see. Now I could go with, well, I'm afraid I don't really agree with that, which is a bit blunt, but I've acknowledged that I've heard what you said first. I've said, I see. Then I'm able to steer the conversation in other directions. I can look at perhaps something like, well, let's see what we can do about that. Or so I'm offering some kind of conciliatory negotiation between us. Or I can look for some form of clarification. So I say, well, I hear your opinion, I see. What do you mean by that particular phrase you've used? And I give you back the phrase. I repeat back the word or the phrase I didn't understand and ask them for clarification. What particularly did you mean by, and then whatever that phrase was you didn't quite understand. Again, it gives you more time to think about what to say. So although there used to be a golden rule on the radio many years ago that you couldn't have silence because people thought the radio wasn't working, but in a real conversation, and in some sense even when you're on the telephone and the person can't see you, when it's your turn to speak, as long as you've acknowledged that now I'm the one who's speaking by saying something like, I see, oh, yes, you can pause between the next piece of what you're saying. And this is particularly important when you're face-to-face talking to someone and you want to slow the conversation down just a bit to give yourself a bit more space to understand what's happening. So don't rush to answer the question straight away. Give yourself time to think. Always ask back some type of clarification or confirmation question. So, I see. So what you're asking me to do is open this suitcase. Is that right? Be clear about what you've understood them to say. It's not really rude. You're giving yourself time before you need to answer the question. Try it. Because there is often you feel a sense of pressure that, oh, I have to have this really complicated, sophisticated answer every time someone says something to me. And often you don't. So that's our challenge for the day. Give that one a go. Give yourself some time to think. Déjame saber en los comentarios, como siempre. But for now, we'll say cheerio.